Can I welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Kirklees Democracy Cross-Party Working Group. Can we start off with item 1, the notes of last meeting? Has anybody got any comments on the notes of last meeting? No. Right, we'll go straight into business then. We've got the civic pathways for young citizens, and we have to receive presentations from officers.
Do you think it would probably be worthwhile us introducing ourselves as well on the line?
Yes, go on. You've reminded me again. We'll go around the table. Can we start with Cathy?
Councillor Cathy Scott.
Councillor Rob Walker.
Councillor Andrew Cooper.
Councillor John Taylor.
Councillor David Sheard.
Carl Whistlecraft, Head of Democracy.
Dr. Andy Michael, University of Huddersfield.
Martin Green from the Learning and Early Sports Service.
Rena Andower, Democracy Service.
Sharon Salvalis, Electoral Services.
Adele Humble, HR Manager.
Right, thank you. I've now been rightly collected. Can we now start with a presentation of the civic pathway for young citizens?
Do you want me to just do a little bit of context?
Yes, you've got, please.
I think last meeting you discussed this item and thereafter thought it'd be useful so that you as a working group have got everything in full view. But you were mindful that a lot of activity were taking place, and today's presentation is hopefully intended to show you from the working group's perspective all the things that are taking place to deliver against that overarching recommendation, I guess, so that you've got it all in full vw, but equally to inform what happens next. Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got a record of what's going on. So who's starting?
I'm first up, I do believe. So National Citizens Service. Just a little bit of context. The National Citizens Service was established under the current government, is now subject to a royal charter, so is firmly placed in statute as a programme for young people. It predominantly kicks in at the end of year 11, so when students have finished their GCSEs, they have the option to undertake a 4-week programme with the National Citizen Service. It's also available in year 12 as well, but the programme tends to be slightly different. Essentially the 4 weeks is split up into a week of residential, outward bound sort of physical activity, abseiling, orienteering, all that sort of stuff. A further week of residential where a whole range of people are invited to share their experiences, whether they be an elected member, the fire service, the police service, a whole sort of introduction to the wider civic and public service community for young people, some skills development as well around communication and employability. The third week is thinking about a social action project, so partnering up with a community and voluntary organisation tends to be putting together a pitch. In Kirklees, they've held a Dragon's Den, and I know that elected members have been involved in some of those Dragon's Den, pitching for a small amount of money that they then use to purchase materials or whatever, and go away and fundraise for the organisation that they partnered up with. Following, so those young people go away in groups of 15, so they go through the programme in a group of 15, and it tends to be a mix of 15 young people who have never met each other before, so they try and get a really good social mix, try and move young people away from their friendship groups. Following the 4-week programme, the young people then become graduates of the National Citizen Service, and there is a whole programme that is designed to take forward further social action activity. Within Kirklees, happened by chance, but the chief executive about 2 years ago had a chance discussion with one of the development managers from the NCS Trust itself nationally, and it was identified that participation of young people in Kirklees was not where we expected it to be. comparable geographies and comparable local authority areas have much higher participation levels. So we embarked on an 18-month programme in partnership with the NCS Trust to try and boost that participation, but also to try and diversify that participation as well, because as well as it being not where we quite wanted it to be, it also clearly wasn't catering for more vulnerable young people, or young people who would face more challenges to going away and either being away from family, or young people with special educational needs or disabilities participating in something that was quite, it wasn't really catering for young people who weren't probably at the front of the queue for it anyway. So we've done quite a lot of work around that, and also to try and make the social action activity linked into the priorities of the district. So great that all this social action activity takes place, great that all this money is raised for the charities, but are those charities and community organisations Kirklees ones, or are they national bodies that simply have a place here? Are they really addressing issues around cohesion, young people's violence, knife, all the things that are affecting our communities? Are they really focusing upon that? And are they linking in well with elected members? Are we looking at how do we rejuvenate our the recommendations from the Democracy Commission? Are we making the most of that real kind of enthusiasm from young people to get stuck into something? Can we sustain that? Can we partner them up with elected members? Can we really get them involved in championing things within their communities? And can we sustain that commitment to voluntary causes in the long term? We've done some of that, but it's not without its challenges, and the challenges tend to come from the way that the programme is commissioned nationally. So when it ends up locally, a lot of the money, in my view, has been stripped out of it. So the ability of the delivery organisations, and in Kirklees, that's Huddersfield Community Foundation and Leeds United, is a kind of north-south split. By the time it gets to those organisations who actually deliver the programme, there's not a lot left in terms of their capacity to engage with us as a local authority on a strategic level, and to engage with partners on a strategic level in the community and voluntary sector. So we've ended up trying to do a lot of that, but ultimately you need those organisations to be able to plan strategically alongside us. As it is, they're very good at getting 1,000 young people out on a programme, but that's really where it kind of stops. So a lot of the lessons learned have been reported back to the National Trust, have been about, you might want, if you want this to be embedded in localities, and if you want this to really maximise that social action within communities, then you need to commission the programme in a different way. There has to be some different outcomes. And that's really where we're at. It's not to say it's not great, and all the indicators suggest it has a profound impact upon those young people who do it. Their volunteering increases, their confidence increases, their ability to and friendship groups increase, their willingness to engage outside of their local communities and make friends across whether it's ethnic lines or class lines or just different parts of the geography increase. Whether that sustains itself in the long run is a different matter, and that's what we want to focus on in the future.
Could you just ask, you mentioned what numbers are we talking about, and what is the constraint on numbers? I mean, I'm just asking, are any young people who want to do it turn it down? Have we got more places than people, or more people than places? What are the numbers?
So in the last summer, or the last kind of cohort that went through, about 1,000 young people have probably done it in Kirklees.
So it's significant, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's probably only about 16% of the eligible cohort who could do it. The National Citizen Service Trust would say that it is unlimited. It is a universal programme for every young people, and every young person should be able to do it if they wish, and therefore, yes, nobody should ever be turned away. But I do know that particularly more challenging young people have been kicked off the programme because they're not geared up to be able to deal with some of that behaviour, because they haven't got the wraparound resources to deal with some of that behaviour.
Anyone else?
I think it comes back to the question or the point you made earlier on, Martin, about it sounds like it was maybe 18 months ago, it was a bit patchy in terms of where people were engaging and where they weren't. Have we seen that level out a bit, or have we still got that nature where in some parts of the district it's perhaps higher than 16%, but some lower than 16%? You still have that?
Yes, we have. What the Trust have done is also invest in our schools, so they've put a little bit of capacity into schools, so there's a dedicated NCS coordinator in every school, which has been really helpful. So there were some schools who just had no participation whatsoever. That's not the case now. At least, there are some young people from every single secondary school who are doing the programme. Participation from B&E communities is really high. It's above the kind of average for the district. Or participation from looked after children, from children with special educational needs is below what you would expect to see if proportionately they all kind of participated. So there's still work to do. But across the district, I think it's fairly even. Yeah.
How does it relate to Duke of Edinburgh? Because
Yeah,
you look at
that's
this
a
and
good
you
question,
you think there's possibly a competition there, and possibly sending people down one route, sending people down another route, maybe a differentiation, which might or might not be a good thing.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. What we've tried to do, and certainly colleagues who work with me on this have met last week with Duke of Edinburgh and Prince's Trust as well. We've been able to adapt part of the NCS programme so that the residential type now qualifies for part of the Duke of Edinburgh award. So you're moving away from it's one or t'other. Actually, it can be both because they complement each other now. But there is still some more work to do that. And so, Duke of Edinburgh has a deserved reputation, but it's not. It's clearly, it's not something that all young people do. We want to get to a point where whether it's Duke of Edinburgh, Prince's Trust, NCS, actually it's part of a pathway that young people are prepared for, and then afterwards we do something with the skills and that that is useful to us as a district. So it's not lost. And what we have is we have those three main kind of programmes there. I think what we've lost is some of the pathways from an earlier age into those, and some of the things afterwards that are really meaningful.
Yeah. Two things really. First thing, what kind of response have you had from the National Trust if you were concerned about the fact resources seem to be going in at a sort of higher national level rather than coming in on the ground to deliver things? And then second question, what's happened in terms of consulting with people about how it could be improved at a local level? Because certainly one of my ex-students, somebody who used to be in my tutor group, he's been running these sessions for the last 2 years, and it's quite interesting talking to him about the positives and the ways to improve things. So I just wondered if the young people who participated in the programmes and the people who've been delivering the things on the ground, have we had really detailed chats with them about improving things?
Yes, we have. On the first point, we were one of a couple of innovation programmes that the Trust kind of piloted in the last 18 months. So the National Youth Academy also worked with five other local authorities in the opportunities areas. So Bradford was one of them, Ipswich was one of them. And pretty much the same message has gone back that, there is a disconnect between the intention and the aims and the actual, delivery on the ground, and it's it is partly to do with the way you commission things. So that has certainly been heard. Hopefully it will be acted upon, and they're recommissioning the programme as we speak. On the second bit, yes, we have talked to young people and a whole range of youth agencies and people involved in young people's provision, and he's been kind of instrumental in that. We commissioned Conscious Youth to do some research with young people who have been participating and get some feedback from them about what's worked, what could be improved, what could be better about the programme. And the biggest issue was in that second week. The first week's great. Everybody tends to go on the programme because the first week they think that's going to be marvellous. Actually, the social action stuff comes out as the most important and what's had the biggest impact upon young people. And the weakest bit was that second bit, because a lot of the stuff that happens there, they tend to have seen it all in schools. So they've had the police in talking about knives, they've had the fire service talking about road safety or whatever it may be. Actually, the biggest positive from that second week was the work that the Democracy Commission team did around voting intentions and all that. That went down really well. But there's a trick in that second week that they're not quite getting right. And I think that's where we can impact.
Kathy?
Yeah, a lot of the things have actually been answered, what I've written down, but about accessibility to it. Young people, mobile, agile, about is there any way that they can actually sign up for it themselves rather than having to go through peer pressure to go on it, so that there's an app that they can say that I have got an interest, lodge an interest, because that's a lot of things, that's how it's done. It's promoted through the media, as in apps and things like that, so that accessibility, it empowers them to do something for themselves, so they don't feel the pressure of you're going to be steered into that.
There's a national website that young people can sign up for directly. Most of the sign-ups tend to take place through schools, and that's where the blockage was. And actually putting the resources into schools has unlocked a lot of that blockage. But it's still on the back of 10 minutes in an assembly, and you're expecting young people to make a decision, and parents to make a decision on that basis. And that's, I think that's where some of the challenge lies. There are misconceptions about how much does it cost. In actual fact, if you can't afford it, that's not a barrier to not going on the programme, but it's presented as though there is a cost to it. That immediately, I think, puts some parents out.
What is it cost?
It's £50
for the lot.
For the lot. But that, if you can't afford the £50, that's not a barrier to doing it. But immediately when it's £50, and it's not explained that if that's not feasible, that shouldn't stop you doing it. Some of the communications are not great, and I think some of the messages to parents, and ultimately it's parents who make the decision as to whether their young person goes on it, and if they've got concerns about their sons and daughters going away potentially for the first time, they've ever been away from home and throwing themselves off cliffs and doing whatever, mixing with people outside of their immediate community and friendship group, that's a big issue. I think that's where we as an authority can play more of a reassuring role, and particularly if it's come from a longer term programme of youth provision where it's promoted from 11, 12 upwards, rather than you're in year 11, all you can think about really is GCSEs, and then you're presented with this thing and you've got to make a snap decision. It doesn't quite work.
There's an awful lot of young people that are already engaged in some sort of group. And I think, schools, but I know when I got to that age, I had enough of school, and I wasn't necessarily listening to school as much. Maybe I should have been, but
I don't think anybody does.
I'm thinking of theatre groups, I'm thinking of uniform groups, I'm thinking of other types of things like that. What engagement is done through them? Because certainly uniform groups, guiding or scouting, it naturally fits very well with that. So are you using those groups to sign people up and seeing it as a natural extension of that activity?
Yeah, we've started to do that, absolutely. And part of the stakeholder groups that we've had have been about drawing in that wider kind of youth alliance and talking about the pathways through and referrals, but some of it is seen as slightly competitive or has been. And particularly, not so much the uniform groups, but certainly, Duke of Edinburgh.
I suppose I'm not thinking just uniform groups as well. I mean, we've got a really active theatre group that, out in my patch, has a lot of young people that go to it, and you engage them through that creative side, rather than it being presented as you finished your school year, here's the next bit of schooling. And I get the point about the second week, because it sounds like it's a lot of tell and not very much do. Whereas if you change that round and you sort of have some of these, creative things involved, and there's certainly stuff that we could do from Kirklees. So it sounds like what they enjoy is the doing stuff, whether it's jumping off cliffs or getting engaged in social action. What they don't want, because they've had a year of being told. So change that telling into action.
And that was the feedback from the young people. They wanted a more diverse range of stuff to do, whether it was music production or theatre. So again, we've fed all that back. I suppose this is where it comes back to the resources, because the NCS model locally is we recruit through schools, we beg the schools to let us in to do a 10-minute assembly, we have all the leaflets there, young people go away, that's it. They haven't got the resources to do that engagement across the wider youth landscape.
Could bring Cathy in.
I think this is a wonderful thing that you're actually doing, Martin, and I think as a councillor myself, I would like to take this into my community, and what I'd like to see is some promotional packs or some information packs that I'd have at hand, that I could actually hand out to them if it's a leaflet, but actually be confident enough to talk about it. So if you could do like a session for councillors that say that you could be advocates out in your community, because I do see this as a very positive. The times where we've had cuts in our youth services and things like that, I see this as a natural progression of something that is there for young people to access. But I'd still want an app kind of thing where you can actually click on our website and say, the democracy website, and say, this is the Princess Trust, or whatever kind of trust, whatever we're doing, so that person can access it and look at it, a video of something in their own time. So it's not that.
I'm just going back to the point I was making, and you were saying that the issue is funding and there's not resources. These groups bring resources with them. So actually, I don't think it's necessarily a cost thing or a resources thing. Why can't you work with the theatres and the uniform groups and get them to do that promotion for you? It doesn't cost you any money that way around. Agree fully with what Cathy's just said. I think that's absolutely right. We tend to agree with Cathy far too much, actually. But I think you need to look at that and say, it complements what they're trying to do. It fits with their values. It fits with their aims. They will do that work for you. It doesn't mean you've got to put resources into it.
No, absolutely. I suppose the distinction I was trying to make between what we can do as an authority, which I think we should absolutely do that, but on the ground, the NCS deliverers, in my view, should be commissioned to do that, and at the moment, they're not. And that's what we wanted to influence. How can it be part of their business?
I think what John and Cathy's been said, and other members have been saying. I think if you need help, try and unblock some of those. Please get in touch with us. And I'm sure we'll try and help you to unblock. I mean, I'm sure that we are interested when you hear that sort of money's being used at the centre rather than coming out to us. I think it gets us hackles a little bit, doesn't it? So
we should be using community plus as well.
But any organisation,
absolutely.
But I tell you, if you want our backing on sort of trying to unblock some of these things and make things work, please get in touch with us and work it up.
Thank you.
Right, who's next?
I think that's me. That's me. So, apprenticeships. So there's a lot of words on there, so I will talk to that. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and share with you what we're doing as a council on apprenticeships. A little bit of context again. We've had a really well-received apprenticeship programme here in Kirklees Council for a number of years. But we got a great opportunity last year when central government implemented the apprenticeship levy, which put a significant amount of money in a pot to spend across council services, across schools, maintain schools across the district. Like I said before, traditionally we've had a really good history of new starts. the apprenticeship levy doesn't just attract now, there's no age limit on an apprenticeship now, which is great. So some of the existing work that we're doing there is we're in the process of negotiating an improved apprenticeship pay proposal, which again will be an attractive sell for any new apprentices to the authority. We've implemented a community outreach programme, so we're doing a lot more in the community now, and I would really welcome the offer that you've just made tonight and there to utilise your links in the community. We're doing a lot in those hard to reach communities with disadvantaged groups to sell the roles that we do here at Kirklees, not just from an apprenticeship point of view, but generally across. And as part of those workshops, they're targeting, as I've said, underrepresented groups, people in deprived areas. And if those individuals aren't job ready yet for an apprenticeship programme, we're linking into other projects that we run across the council, the project called Works Better. So that will help people with pre-employment skills and develop some of those pre-employment skill sets to get them ready to apply for an apprenticeship as well. Because what the levy doesn't do is allow us to use that funds for pre-employment programmes, and I think that's probably a trick that we're missing in terms of that money. Our apprenticeship advert is going out a lot earlier this year. We normally go out to advert in April, May time, but our advert will be out in February. This year, again, working with schools and colleges, we hope to attract more young people at a better time when they're making those choices, so that when they've come out of the exam period, they know whether they've got a firmed up conditional offer as an authority. And so again, we're doing a piece of work there where we're going out to advertise a lot sooner. We're trying to make that more modern and young, so day in the lives, using blogs, using case studies of current apprentices, so it's not just lots of words, it's more interactive. It'd be great to have an app to sell some of these, but that's probably future hopes. We've got a number of events coming up. We've got a big event at Colne Valley High School on the 17th of January. We've got the annual C&K apprenticeship event at the stadium where we'll get 1,700 young people coming through those doors there, and we use our current apprenticeship cohort apprentices to go and sell the roles, so that those young people are hearing it from our young people how good it is to work here. We also run a North Kirklees event on the 12th of February, so again, anything you can do to help. That is at Battersea Town Hall. Yes, Battersea Town Hall. As part of the programme around the outreach work, we're also developing a talent pool and a talent bank. So the outreach programmes that we've done out in the community at Huddersfield University with some of our colleges and schools, and those events I've just mentioned there, we're asking young people to express an interest in working for us, and we will put them in a talent pool where we will proactively engage with them until they're ready to apply for an apprenticeship programme with us. And through that mechanism, we're also offering them workshops around CV writing, how to apply for a role. So we're trying to get in there a lot early to prepare themselves, to prepare them for applying for a role with us. We're using the levy to support entry level, so school leavers, young people, but also from a CPD point of view to develop our own staff, so grow our own. So again, when young people join us in an organisation, they see clear career pathways, so they want to stay with us. So it's just not about us getting people in the door and ticking that box, it's about showing them the value and what we're going to invest in them as a young person, and you could have a career with us as an organisation, not just that way, but perhaps breadth-wise as well, to expand your knowledge. We're also working with schools. We do a lot with maintained schools, supporting them to spend their levy, which is great, and we're working with the Schools Forum and the secondary heads and the primary heads to look at pooling some of the resource that they've got, because for some schools they don't have enough money in their levy to spend it. And as a schools forum, they've decided that we need to look at it for the good of the district. So as a school, I may not have enough to spend on an apprentice, but you as a school have got a lot of money in there you can't spend, so can I borrow some of that? Yeah. So we're looking at that in the wider context. And we're also working with our care leavers service here in Kirklees to look at support package to support care leavers into apprenticeship programmes. And one of the programmes that we've got agreed is a Saturday job scheme. Doesn't need to be on a Saturday, it could be any day during the week, but again to build some of their employability skills up, and so that they're ready then to apply for a programme. So that's not started, but I hope it will start within the next few months, which is great. And just moving on to some of our future aspirations, we want to develop a more strategic and coordinated approach to placements. We're talking with the university, with Andy. We've ad hoc done placements in Kirklees before, but there's a wealth with the university in terms of students wanting to gain experience, but actually for us as an organisation to use them as a resource as well, to bring in new, fresh ideas. So that's something that we're working in partnership with the university to develop. And I also want to review and revamp our work placement programme that we do with schools, to make sure that we have more opportunities for young people to come and have work placements with us. We're working with our young employee network to create, as I said earlier, more vibrant recruitment activity, so we become more attractive to young people across the district as an organisation. And we're doing quite a lot of work to support organisations in Martin's world with SMEs. So if we don't have something that a young person wants as a career, who else across the district might have something, and we will work in partnership with the services across the council to support those young people to find roles. I think one of the areas I do really want to push on is parents, and then seeing the attractiveness of an apprenticeship programme. And a young person doesn't necessarily need to go into higher education. That might not be the right route for them. So how do we reshape that message to parents to say that an apprenticeship programme is just as good, if not in some cases better for your child than going into higher education? A couple of events that we've run here previously when I first joined the council, a number of young people had gone on to higher education and it wasn't for them, and they'd fallen out of that system, so they were coming back around. So I think it's just making sure everybody, including parents, schools and the young person, is as fully informed as possible on what great opportunities apprenticeships can give them.
Thanks very much. More for this?
Yeah.
No?
I think you're doing some really good work with this. I think it's very, very important. You mentioned about your concerns about the lack of funding for pre-employment programmes. Yeah. I think that's really important because they're the young people who are going to find it most difficult to get into work. Is there more we can do? Is there more we can do as elected members to support you in lobbying for that funding or doing whatever? What do you think we can do to try and tackle that?
That'd be great. We do have, through other briefings that we do, have asked other members to do some of that lobbying for us. We also work as part of the Yorkshire and Humber Regional Group with the LGA, and we're constantly lobbying them to say, look, we've got a huge amount of money to develop the people across the district and our own staff. We need to utilise some of that for some of that pre-employment. So I would welcome any support that you can do, and I'm more than happy to pull some facts, figures, data, concerns together to share with you that you can then use.
What's the reason behind the barrier for that? Is it because someone who just wrote up the criteria of what you can spend it on, missed it off, or is it a purposeful missing it off to stop some reason? I mean, what is the barrier? It makes so much sense to us, and for what you've said, I mean, we just wonder where that barrier was put in to not allow you to do that.
I probably can't answer that from a central government point of view, but I think it's to get more apprentices into employment. We pay a levy on a monthly basis. If that levy is not spent after 24 months, that money then goes back into central government. So there is an absolute impetus for us to spend that money, if not it then.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is why you say that you're not allowed to spend the money on that which to everyone, I think doesn't make sense that you're not, because it's all part of getting more people into work. So we're trying to work out why somebody decided not to allow you to spend it.
I think they possibly argue that there are other programmes around for that pre-employment, so whether it's European funding or there are traineeship programmes, or they don't necessarily kind of fit together. And the colleagues in, particularly Victoria Harper and others, who spend their life trying to knit things together, so they work for the individual, so that the individual is able to get that. But they don't always fit together. Eligibility criteria, timings, are quite difficult. But I suspect it's the compartmentalisation of
Well, it's a barrier here that is stopping something happening that makes absolute sense. Is there anything we can do to lobby to try and get that barrier changed? That's what I'm saying.
Because the Education Select Committee have really been focusing in on apprenticeships. I think Robert Halfram, the Conservative chair of that group, is very concerned with apprenticeships, and I know they've been looking at all these kind of things that present barriers. So possibly they ought to be looking at whether we can present some evidence of one of their reviews of this to try and get the point across. So we'll look into that.
That'd be really helpful, and it's just not an issue for us as a district and the council. It's a national issue.
Yes,
so
obviously, yeah.
It is. So all the networks we do with other local authorities have got the same frustrations.
Okay. Anyone else? No, thanks very much. I mean, that's really encouraging. I think we've always had that tradition in Kirklees of supporting more apprentices than we actually needed, because we just see that as a way forward. We've always been in support of apprenticeships. Going back to the 80s when everything else was being cut back in the 80s. One thing we didn't cut, and in fact, Lawrence Conlon at the time were very proud of setting on an extra 200 above what we actually needed, an extra 200 apprentices. That was in the trades at that time, and that was the old-fashioned apprenticeships where it was just proper apprenticeships. but it's an extra 200 on them at that time, over and above what we needed, because most of the construction industry at that time didn't have apprentices, and most people did their training through local authorities. So we've always had that tradition, and I know the scene has changed altogether. It means different things, it's done differently. But I still think that it's an option that a lot of children, a lot of young people need to be aware of that option as a realistic option into a career, into a life, rather than just. And it's not a fallout from good university. It's a good alternative to good university for a lot of people. I think we've got to make that clear to people, because I think in the past some of their advisors always use it as a second or a lower option, and I think it's got to be there at a level with, for certain people, it's a better option than
sorry, Matt, and I mean, as part of our marketing, it's, you will come out with the same level of degree as someone else, but you're earning at the same time. You don't come out with the same level of debt as well. So there's a whole wealth, and all the other employee benefits we offer as an organisation. It's a huge, fantastic career pathway from my point of view.
That's the bit that often gets missed. It's an alternative way into higher education. So some of the better employers in the district will enable their apprentices to start at level 2 and to finish at level 7 if that's where it is. Postgraduate kind of study, and that's what it's an alternative channel. It's not.
Andy?
I was just going to. I think the apprenticeship approach is that valuable at a national level, considered as introduced university apprentice program pathways, and so we're seeing that the apprenticeship model is both available at Kirklees College and also at the university. So I think it's something which, yesterday at the Young Employee Network Awards at Kirklees that I was chairing, there was a award for the best young apprenticeship. I think it's something that Kirklees seems to be very alive to the opportunities of, and I can only encourage more of that. The university certainly wants to play its part in that.
I just think it's ironic is that the system of not having those barriers between higher and vocational education and that national linkage was something we imposed on Germany after the Second World War, but never did ourselves. And Germans don't have that distinction between lines of, and the more easy transfer between academic and interaction. Whereas in the UK we tend to have two separate lines and never the twitch of me. I think you're right. That's starting to break down. But it is.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Right, who's next? Yes.
Hi, thank you. So I manage the area neighbourhood team in the Democracy Service and also the Involving Citizens Equally team. And the focus for both teams over the last 18 months has really been on delivering on the active citizens' recommendations in the Democracy Commission. So this summarises the work across both teams. So the Councillor Toolkit was launched at council meeting in October 2017 as part of Local Democracy Week. And since then we've been supporting councillor-led sessions in schools And that's not been us going in and doing it, it's very much been counsellor-led, and we've provided support by way of resources to run very creative and interactive sessions in schools, and that's junior, primary and secondary schools. So far there's been 12 sessions run in schools. The focus has been largely in South Kirklees, but we want to look at how we can engage more with schools in North Kirklees as well. UK Parliament, they offer a fantastic training programme through their education programme, and over the last, about 3 months ago, 10 people in the service did the ambassadors training, which means that they are now qualified to deliver 2 elements of their training programme. There's 6 in total, and we hope to progress to deliver all 6 in time. In 2017, in October, we did a huge programme of events for Local Democracy Week. It was the first time really that we had such a focus in Kirklees, and that was largely pulled together by the area neighbourhood team. We've done the same again in October 2018, but the focus has changed. We've actually supported more community-led activities rather than us doing the doing, working with the communities to do things in their local community themselves, such as the the Batley and Huddersfield 150. That's been very community-led. With the Kirklees Youth Council has done a huge amount of work, and something that we were really keen to do was let them get some recognition for the work that they've done. So a number of young people have been put forward for awards. So Jacob and Emily both got the Diana Award for democracy education, and Jacob was nominated for the National Democracy and Parliament Week Awards. He didn't actually get them, but still we wanted to make sure that he was nominated, and that's through working with the schools that they're studying at. NCS, the National Citizen Service, working really closely with Martin. So there's from within the area neighbourhood team, there's dedicated resource to work alongside Martin, and the focus really for that work is engaging with elected members, looking at the week 2 element and looking at how we can enhance that offer by getting different people involved in that, and also looking at the social action element and how we can really embed that and root that in local communities by working closely with elected members. There's also been some support to the partnership as well that's been established. Kirklees Youth Council, at the moment it is quite a minimum offer because we are looking at how we can grow that, but there's still the offer of the introduction to local democracy and leadership skills in schools. At the moment just working in 2 schools, Hillside Primary and Hartshead Junior and Infant School. The Democracy Ambassadors Programme, which is quite a new programme, is being piloted at the moment. At the moment, a member of the team is working in Manor School with 24 young people from their youth council. And the idea with that is that once they have done the training, they then deliver to their peers. So that each of the 24 young people will deliver to another 20 young people to sort of spread the word through peer-to-peer learning. That programme is running until the end of March, and then there'll be hopefully some next steps beyond that. Young people's voice and influence and change. So this is really the focus of the Involving the Citizens Equally team. This is very commissioned and targeted work. So some examples of recent work is the SEND transition work. There's been support with the Year 9 survey, so getting young people to help shape some of the questions and how they're phrased as part of the Year 9 service. The Staying Safe and Neglect project that young people have been involved in, to looking at what do they understand by neglecting staying safe and what would work for them around that. And then also more recently there is a Voice of the Child's Action Plan that's being developed, and the team is supporting some of the delivery around that and development of that action plan. Just wanted to mention, it's not on there, that we have supported placements in the service. So for the last couple of years we worked with the university and supported 4 students, and also working with members to look at shadowing with counsellors, particularly with the 2 schools in Kirklees. We hope to do more of that, so look at sort of strengthen the links around that. In terms of future aspirations, a big piece of work is about growing the Stronger Youth Council. We do recognise that over the last 10 years, it's been 10 years since the Youth Council was established, the focus has been very much on 4 schools per year, so it's been very intense. And we want to look at how we can grow that so more young people have an opportunity to be involved in different elements of that. So there's some engagement taking place at the moment, so a survey that's online at the moment, and so far 500 young people have contributed to that. we hope by the end of March that 1,000 young people will have had their say, and then we can develop a programme that really meets young people's needs going forward. Just listening to what's been said so far, there's tons that's happening, and an ambition for us is looking at how we can develop some resources that are shared maybe, and have a coordinated pathway for young people that young people really understand at different levels, and how they can engage at different levels and different times, and maybe have some almost like a train the trainer ambassadors programme around that. It would be fantastic to develop that. And then also the UK Parliament Education Programme, their resources are brilliant. They're so comprehensive, they're very interactive and creative. We want to look at how we can progress with that through the Silver and Gold Ambassadors Programme, so we can deliver more for our young citizens here. And then just recognising that the work that's already taken place, we want to look at how we can share some of those stories and successes, because there's so much happening. We want to shout about it and let other young people know, so they can look at how they can engage in the whole programme that's available to them. We do have some challenges I wanted to just flag up while I had the chance, which is engagement with schools. Now, unless we've got a really good relationship with schools, it's difficult to engage with the office email. So, you know, a lot of the engagement we do, it's just based on goodwill and relationships, and we need to look at how we get beyond that. So any support available would be brilliant. And then also the NCS work, the innovation pilot is coming to an end, but we've made a commitment to continue working with Martin you know, for the foreseeable future. There will be reduced resources, so we need to think carefully how we maximise what we've got, not just in our service, but you know, across the
I think the
piece.
point's well made. It's working better with organisations out there who do have the resources.
And particularly looking at how we link with the third sector, because we have got the Kirklees Youth Alliance that is engaging with a number of community associations that work with young people. I think they've got a network of 80 that they're engaging with already. You know, how can we work with them to maximise the engagement, the outreach, and the number of young people that are involved.
Any comments now? Kathy?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the schools. I think we've had this discussion before. I'm extremely worried that they're not signing up to it, and maybe there may be a new way of doing things to get them more engaged. I don't know how, but I know around this table, great minds, when you all come together, you'll find a way of going in there. I also wanted to touch on care leavers. When you're talking about democracy and people accessing things, I think it's a great barrier that it's an opportunity missed with young people coming in the care system or coming out of the care system. I think they're young people that we should be, you know, wrapping around and finding out what their journey's been like, because they can contribute to a lot of things that are going on within Chamber, and I'd like to see more of that. I'd also like to see different faces, because I think if you do, you seem to on a lot of pictures you see quite a lot of the same faces, and I think it should be across Kirklees. It's one Kirklees, it's not a divide, so it's a collective. So, but I have to say the work you've been doing has been outstanding.
We do recognise that the focus with the schools has been largely South Kirklees, and you know, any support that there is to engage with schools, we'd gladly look at it. But I mean, our general line of inquiry is through the office email address. If you haven't already got a contact there, which doesn't often result in anything, so where the personal contact is there. And certainly, I know there's a few councils that are governors in schools, so if that's a routine for us, then you know, let's look at that. That would be really helpful.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think at schools, particularly primary schools, is a good thing to do. We've done Springwood, News and Juniors, and I think one of the key things there is actually challenging the image of what councillors and politicians are all about, because you know, old guys who sit in rooms mouthing off is not always untrue. But I think it's good to show a wider perspective about what councils are, what they can do and things. And so I think that's an important thing, and that should be part of it. But democracy itself has got a bit of a tarnished image. Recent events do not shine well on democracy, and people look at it and think, how the heck do we end up in this situation? And I think we've got to, in many ways, promote the concept democracy. I think you do democracy well, you can do democracy badly, you can do both of those things, but I think we need to look at actually presenting it and showing how it can be a positive influence on people's lives. And one of the things that came out very strongly to me when I went to the celebration event for the Kirklees Youth Council was how it changed people's lives, and that was just really inspirational stuff. Really, people who lacked self-confidence, people who'd gone through problems in their lives, had found something there which gave them self-confidence. And I think one of the things we really want from citizens is for them to be the sort of people who will question things, the sort of people who will stand up for themselves, the people who will not bend to authority and be told what to do. And so in many ways we're trying to shape people, we're trying to shape them into being active, confident citizens of this country who feel they can stand up for themselves. So when we think about outcomes, that's one of the key ones I'd like to see.
Can I just ask, one thing that I just seems to be missing from that to me is that I know that a lot of the trade unions have got youth development programs.
Yeah.
Because the one the amendment that you've been very much involved with the trade union is anyway.
All right.
You know, so I mean they've got, some of the trade unions have got youth and they're sort of helping young people in explaining politics to them and helping them feel confident and build them. So I think you need to be tapping into what the trade unions are doing as well, because they're, in particular in North Kirklees, they've got a centre there, the GMB, and they've got a youth advancement programme which is mostly about democracy and helping people to campaign.
Did you say that you've got a link for that, Kathy?
I actually, I'm sometimes in their office for that.
Oh,
yeah.
right. Okay.
Well, thanks very much. Who's next?
It's a right conveyor belt.
Yes. Well, what a rare talent.
Yeah, it's me next. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm actually standing in for Ali. Obviously, I'm not Ali. I'm Mashuda Sheikh, and I'm Faith and Integration Manager, and I manage on an operational level the cohesion team for Kirklees. Just give you a quick overview of the team. We've got 6 members of staff that work across Kirklees. They have patch areas, they've got ward areas, but they also have specialisms, and one of our specialisms is schools and young people. So we have 2 offices, one in South and one in North, working specifically on this remit. Just to give you a quick overview, and whilst people were talking, I was adding things, so I'm sorry, but I have added a few things that we are doing that I've kind of missed off. So the existing work that we are doing at the moment is a project called My Country, My Vote. I don't know how many people have actually heard of it. It's a package that we deliver in schools around democracy and citizenship. It started off, a lot of it was about what is democracy, how does Parliament work, who are your local councillors and MPs. It's kind of moved on to that, to campaigning, to encouraging young people that if they have issues that are pertinent to them, how do they kind of put a campaign together. We started it off with the university, actually, Huddersfield University, so we're in partners with Andy and obviously students to go into schools. We started off with secondary schools. What we realised with secondary schools, that an intense programme like that, it took a lot of time out for the students. With GCSEs and everything else in schools, they were limited to how much time they could put to this. So we thought we'd try pilot it in primary schools and see how it went. So we go in for a day, and from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, they actually come up with a campaign. And it's been fantastic in primary schools. I think they really get democracy, and they understand that if they've got an issue, who do we contact? Although we were a bit perturbed in the sense that they kept saying, "Oh, we'll contact the MPs," and we're like, "No, the councillors come first." They're like, "Oh, councillors." But so it's really important that we recognise that they need to know that local councils are their kind of first point of contact. So that's been a really good impact. We are going back to our initial cohort that we started in 2014, Andy, to see what impact that's had on them young people now, because they're at voting age now. So it'd be really good to see, has it made a difference of how they'll vote, in the sense that are they actually going to vote, and you know, they're thinking about policies and whatever. So we're looking into that at the moment. Obviously, with capacity, we have to think, you know, how long can we go into schools and deliver, because it takes a lot of time out. So we're developing a school-led package that teachers can take on themselves. Obviously, we'll still be there to support, but we won't actually be delivering, because, you know, 6 members of staff, they can't go to every school. So that's something. Following on from that, we're looking at a programme called Changemakers. That's focused on young people that have left school, so college, but also adults, because what we found is lots of groups in our communities that are doing a lot of activism and lots of, they want to make changes, so they have friends of groups and stuff, but it's also encouraging them that doing it in a democratic way, and you know, giving them campaign skills. So we've piloted it, we did it in Democracy Week with the Democracy team, and it was really success, because we got a lot out of it, and I think community groups got a lot out of it as well. And I think a lot of community groups, they weren't just linking with like Democracy team or even like councillors, you know, they weren't thinking that's their first point of contact if they've got issues in their community, which is kind of thinking, well, is that the most normal thing to do? So that's another programme we're developing. For schools, we are doing what's called school twinning, a programme called Carry My Story, and it links school not just with other schools, but it actually links schools with community groups. And we're doing that with Yorkshire Spirit, a CIC, so they're delivering on our behalf with the support of our staff. Unaccompanied asylum seekers drop-in, or we have a drop-in every week for young people, specifically children that have come across unaccompanied, so providing support for them, providing activities for them. And what we want to progress with that is the whole concept of democracy. I think, you know, and citizenship, I think they really, obviously they're coming from a different country, they don't understand the kind of rules and responsibilities that we have here as well. So I think working to put a programme together. And then Batley 150, we've been involved in that in North Kirklees. Simon, one of our staff, is taking over some of the work as well. And Welcoming Schools, it's a programme around encouraging schools to visit faith centres. And that's been a good success, and obviously we're supporting to carrying that on. Future aspirations, we have lots of ideas, but you know, it's capacity again. We're looking at developing a leadership programme for young people. Now, what we found with that, we've had quite a few meetings with the university, student union, the colleges, and also independent faith schools. What we found, we can't have a generic programme that fits all. It's, you know, because everyone has different needs. So we're kind of developing a 3-tier programme that will meet the needs of young people depending on which institution they're part of. It is in the very early stages. Citizenship education in madrasas. There isn't anything at the moment in madrasas. So my own specialism is around faith and strengthening faith organisations, and I think given the number of children that attend supplementary schools, madrasas, it's a big thing that we're missing out on. So we're looking at developing. I know other authorities have got certain programmes that they run which are quite independent, so it's not run by a local authority, but we want one so that we kind of deliver. So it's something that we're hoping to do. Again, My Country, My Vote, Changemakers, to take that forward. And something that we are looking at, because we do get schools that contact us if there's any issues around cohesion. And whilst we do go in and we'll put a specific project for that school, it's not an offer that we offer to all schools, and it's something that we think we should look into. Have what's the cohesion offer to schools, because we are getting quite a few number of requests. So that's kind of the overall picture. And the reason we've got Paddy to Bear, that's my kind of thing, is that it's something that I try and get the team to have an ethos that, you know, in Kirklees we have such a diverse community, people come from everywhere, but it's a place of welcome. We come under the banner of Kirklees Welcomes, that, you know, everyone fits in, no matter where you're from. Kirklees is a place to fit in.
Apart from Lancashire.
Yeah, so, but that's Ali, because he's from Lancashire, so I don't want to mention that. Yeah, we've let him in. Yeah.
Diversity has its limits.
Yeah,
Welcome everybody, but
So that's kind of the, sorry if I missed anything out, but yeah, that's kind of what we do.
As long as the Pennines there to protect us.
there are pillboxes still on the top of the Pennines. on the border. I can show you a photograph of them. Anyone else want to bid? I think that's superb.
I think
Anybody
it's
else?
fantastic.
And I agree with the madrasas aspect. You know, I've been to the Lockwood madrasa on a number of occasions and things, and that's it's a real to actually get folks engaged there is a really good thing, and sometimes it's easier to do that than schools. And to get in if you've got good links with the faith community there. So one of the things that does interest me is that, particularly within Asia, the Asian community, and some aspects, not all, but there is a certain amount of people being told how to vote by people higher up in their families. It's like, we've not been told how to vote yet, and so when I was talking earlier about questioning, about getting people to think for themselves, to look out for their own interests, to look out for their community interests in those sort of ways. We want thinking voters, I think, a lot of the time. We want people who look around them and challenge the politicians who represent them, to make them work for their.
That's true. Going back to My Country, My Vote, because when we initially contacted Andy at the university, it was around the issue of, how are people voting, and is it because somebody's telling them to vote a particular one, put the X or whatever. And, there was this thing, we should have like leaflets saying, this is the right way to vote, and you should vote for integrity. And we thought, well, that's not really going to do much, because the people have literally been there. So we thought, let's start with the young people. And I think it's really important to go back to that cohort and think, has it actually influenced it? Is it that we need education in schools, like, the stuff that Venus team's doing, to encourage young people so that the next generation are changing? Because, once you get to adults, you kind of get stuck in your ways as well. But we recently did the voter ID engagement, so we went out into communities and asked about if we needed ID to vote, what would be the issue?
I think that's one of the things we've got to be careful not to equate voting with democracy. As the only correlation. I mean, it needs that thought. I think wasn't it Rousseau that said the English think they are free because they vote? It was Rousseau that said that. And so, voting itself does not define democracy, and it's that participation that we're trying to.
And also, when we asked,
Andrew says it's more thinking type of participation rather than just routine.
It goes back to that active citizenship as well, because when we did the voter ID stuff, a lot of people said, I don't have, apart from the passport, because most people have a passport, or if most not don't, but apart from that, women especially didn't have any form of ID that was in their sole name. So like bank accounts were all controlled by the husband, so they had like joint names. So bills weren't in their own names. So apart from the passport, there wasn't anything else. So that's something that think, or if they drove. I don't drive, so I don't have one. But and a lot of women didn't even have the bills in their joint name. It was just in their husband's. So it's something you think, okay. So there's a lot about how they were actually getting involved in civic life, not just voting, but everything else. It was all dependent on their husbands.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. The sessions that you've done in schools, have you encouraged counsellors to go in with you to?
We have in some schools, we have in the ones that we've piloted. We have.
Do you see a scope for extending that?
I think
perhaps
so,
helping
definitely.
with the capacity issue.
Oh yeah, I think that would be, because it's actually it's a package, so it's there. It's about encouraging young people to come up with their campaigns. So it'd be really good to maybe do a pilot with counsellors.
Because I've been in done things in school, and I think it's really interesting, and I think it's great to engage with the youngsters. I think it works.
I think Erin once at council told her accountant when she came into a school, and she was actually amazed at the level of interest the children had. She went in a junior school. I forgot what programme it was. But she told us at council that she got really intelligent questions from very young, very young children.
Definitely. And I think the campaigns they came out with, they were really thinking about, you know, what was going on in their community. So it might be, you know, parking issues or litter or something. It was about their community, how they wanted to improve that. And I think to follow it on, and maybe like say like if they had an issue with the park, and you know we do a tidy up, that's going to make a massive difference to them because they've made that little change in their community.
Right, thanks very much. Must be you.
Just to put some context, our outreach programme was developed with support of council money before we went into individual electoral registration to try and make sure that we maintain levels of registration. So we've got an outreach officer, we have 2 part-time officers. They have since 2014 worked with a range of different groups across North and South Kirklees to try and encourage, raise awareness and maximise registration. So if we just focus on some of the things that we're doing at the moment in terms of the Democracy Commission work, we're working with Conley High School in two streams really. One, to deliver citizenship lessons, workshops that promote voting and registration but also explain democracy and how political decisions are made. We've held workshops with 50 students so far and we'll continue to do that. But the other side of that is to try and see how we can work with the school to integrate an optional voluntary voter registration in schools. So it's looking at the administration of the school, it's looking at GDPR because obviously to register the individual has to have a national insurance number. So it's quite complex in terms of personal information, and obviously all the young people are 16 at a different time. So we're hoping to come up with some, not a one-size-fits-all because all schools are different. So that's what we're doing with Conley High School. We're also, as Nina's mentioned, we're working with Norah End on the Democracy Ambassador Programme. I won't go through the details because Steve has explained that. And we're also looking at working with Thornhill Academy at running the Democracy Ambassador Programme there as well. I think, following on from what Nina said and other people, it is very difficult to get into schools. I attended the head teachers meeting last year and spoke to all the head teachers, talked about what we can do, talked about going into schools as the democracy series, what we can do, talked about lending ballot boxes out so they can have their own elections and things like that. And then we sent emails. We sent an email straight away. We sent an email at the beginning of the school term, and we've got very little response. So any help that we can have. I mean, I have to say our target and cohort has been year 10 and 11 because obviously it's the older young people that will be obviously approaching 16, so they can register to vote. We also have done some work with Huddersfield Town Foundation. In February we're going to train some of their coaches, almost trainer sessions, and in June we're doing some work in Sallandine, Milcombe Valley and Newsham. But that's using their links, established links, which is why they're all in South Kirklees. We have worked and we continue to work with KITS and any careers services in terms of apprentices, so we go and deliver workshops with KITS, with YH training services. We've got the National Business College apprentices, so employability solutions, so we go to, that's mainly 16 to 20-year-olds, so we are invited and we do workshops in terms of, again the same, explaining democracy, explaining how decisions are made, and voting and registration. Samantha, who's our outreach officer, she works with Vision Connect, and we've got a session in March, so that's the RNIB, anyone with visual impairments, and we look at identify problems as well, because it's about any particular group that might have a problem voting or might have a problem understanding. So we work with different groups. We work with people who are carers of people, and we go to carers events, and sometimes it's about networking and picking up if there's any groups we can work with, and just sort of to get in there, because it's quite difficult sometimes. And in terms of running an election, anybody that feeds back in terms of, I'm talking about people with disabilities, whether they're learning difficulties like that, is barriers to being able to sort of access voting. So we're always keen to. Sam recently met with somebody from RNIB, and we were just talking about how the polling station is set up, where the posters should be. you know, the very simple things that you don't always think about that people with a visual impairment actually, you know, struggle with in a polling station. We have taken part of UK Parliament, it's been mentioned, the Empower programme with young people with learning difficulties. We're attempting to roll out something with special schools, so if anybody's got any help, we can help to get into special schools. We actually did something with Empower. We took a polling booth, we took ballot boxes, we took ballot papers, we had a vote. Every young person that attended that session was already on the register, which was quite interesting really in terms of, you know, presumably because their carer or their parents had supported them to be on the register, but obviously we did work on in terms of educating about what democracy is and who makes decisions. Something that was mentioned earlier, you know, last year we had, in 2017, we had the general election. In the electoral services office, we got a lot of calls from people asking why Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May weren't on the ballot paper. So I think there is a huge area of misunderstanding or education of people, and I think it's probably something to do with the campaign as well and the way the media reports things, but there was, and that was not just young people, that was a range of different groups that had a misunderstanding of how the difference between local politicians and national politicians.
The local goes out the window.
Yeah. And I think there is generally a misunderstanding about what local politicians do. You know, and obviously you all know there's a greater turnout for national elections than there is local elections. So I think there's a huge amount of work to do in terms of making that distinction between local politicians work and what you do for the community and how there's the interaction.
I think it's not helped by the spending rules, isn't it? Because the spending rules in a general election for the MP are very specific about how much you can spend. But parties nationally have much more sort of ability, so they can send stuff nationally. So people will get stuff through the letterbox that'll have Theresa May or Jeremy Corbyn on it, and not necessarily the local MP or the local candidate. And that's not going to help.
In 2015 we didn't have those inquiries, but 2017 we did have those inquiries. So I think something changed with the campaigning and everything.
I think it's because it was shorter.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. And then obviously this, I'm mixing from existing work to future work. Obviously this year, 2019, it's 50 years since the voting age was reduced from 21 to 18. So we're looking at doing some sort of events which will, you know, publicise that, working themes team again. So we do a lot of work together in terms of sharing work. The Democracy Ambassador Programme, I think what we need to do...
I was totally against that. Because they didn't change it till I was 21. So why should they? So the first time I voted, there were people that voted at 18 and I was 21, and I thought it looked fair.
So I think that is an anniversary. It's an anniversary you can use in terms of doing events.
You could share David's story, couldn't you? He wasn't listening. We're going to give an example.
And every year since IER was introduced, there's been a national voter registration day, and we've taken part in that, and that was progressed by the ballot, and that has stopped now, and we are looking at seeking views really. It's something that's come up this week. Is should we do a Kirklees voter registration day? You know, should we start and establish a voter registration day? Obviously in time for the local elections, so that, you know, outside of the canvass period. And I think it would if we got together as a group, we could do things across North and South Kirklees just to raise awareness about registration and democracy at the same time. Since I think Sam's already spoken to you, hasn't she, about that she said she'd had a word with you. Since 2014, the outreach workers have worked with the university and the Students' Union quite a lot really, and we worked quite intensely with the Students' Union to begin with, and now they are actually doing the job for us, and it's sort of light touch at the moment. And obviously we have developed an integrated voter registration on the university portal when students enrol. It's worked very well this year. The difficulty is students don't have to register in term time address. I think there's work to be done on it. It needs to be developed. Statistically, there's more statistics that we need, because we need to understand why the student has chosen not to register here. and they may not want to, they may be registered at home and decided, but there's more work that needs to be done on the actual fields that we've got in there. But Sam, we had, yesterday we went to Greenhead College and we did some voter registration activities and engagement, and the assistant principal has agreed. We talked about what we're doing at the university, and they want to look at Greenhead College in developing some sort of similar type of automatic registration. And yes, there are students at Greenhead that will come from Calderdale and Bradford, but you know, the more we can do, and the young people we met, we got 33 registrations yesterday and they all lived in Kirklees. So that's a real positive, and we're looking to do something. New College are looking to, we told them what we're doing at Greenhead College, and they're looking to do something similar, and then we'll be moving to Kirklees College to see whether we can cascade that across all the colleges. In terms of the difficulties we have is getting into schools as everyone else. Appreciate the head teachers are very busy. You know, our particular target is year 11 and they are busy with exams. So it's about timing, it's about term time, and it's about how we can get in there. And I think that's it. Unless anyone's got any question.
I think it's lovely the work that you are doing, and it yet again it concerns me, the barrier with schools and curriculum. And it was just a thought whilst you were speaking. Is it something, because it's community orientated and a lot of the schools have got to be involved in the community and things like that, is it something it could be accredited in some kind of way, or Ofsted recognise that that's part of the curriculum, they are dealing with democracy and looking at things like that on that side? I don't know. I think it's something that we should be exploring more to see that, if a school does engage with us, is a benefit to them because it'll contribute to that school's journey and its learning path for its young people. So I don't know. It was just something as you were sat there and saying it. I just think that there should be something there.
There are some, I think, some positive changes in the new Ofsted framework that's coming in, which is
it ties in.
Yeah, it's starting to recognise the kind of role of the school in developing that wider kind of engagement with its community, but although that richer kind of young person, moving away, I guess, from just exams as being the sole determinant of the judgment upon the school, but actually the school's impact upon wider determinants of a young person's life. So there's an opportunity there, definitely. And I think there are changes imminent to the is it the PSHE curriculum, the personal social health curriculum, that I think we can package stuff here, because it is a common theme of this morning, isn't it, that the ability to engage schools logistically, but also because they are simply challenged with delivering what they need to, and particularly in year 10 and year 11 around GCSEs it's difficult. Natalie McSheffrey, a colleague of mine, is now appointed as the strategic relationship manager with schools. So I think if we had a single point of contact through which a lot of this could be funneled, we'd get a better result on your behalf. But I think the point's well made. If we packaged it up as a whole, rather than individual kind of programs or offers to schools, we'd probably get a better response as well, because it could fit neatly into the curriculum.
It's not just to be a package. It's got to be. We should be doing that because this is for the reputation of the school. This is for the good of the pupils. That kind of.
Couple of thoughts on this. Very supportive of what you said, Sharon. Uniform groups. I'll come back to uniform groups again.
I wrote that down, actually.
Yeah, because I imagine if they haven't, we should try and work and pilot a badge for them. Is there some? I don't know.
We've talked about developing a certificate. Could be signed by.
It's got a hammer and sickle on it.
We'll come to blows one day. But is there a citizenship badge that uniform groups could do? And if we did it at the right age group, there's an opportunity where I'm trying to think of how to get around this block that schools are a problem. And I understand that perhaps they're trying to focus on getting the students through you know, the GCSEs and all this kind of stuff. So how else can we do that? So that was one thought. I was really pleased to hear you mention carers, because it's one of my worries, and that's across all age groups, not just young people, but there are young people who are carers, and probably in terms of exercising their vote is more difficult for them because they may not be able to have the opportunity to go and do it because of their caring responsibilities. I think we need to make much more use of Community Plus as a resource across Kirklees on a lot of these aspects. That's a service that's been set up, that is out in our communities, that has knowledge of groups, has ways of getting into various groups and things, and what role do they play in any of this? And I'm not sure that they have any responsibility at the moment, but we certainly ought to be picking that up. And then just on your voter registration day, and I get your point about it needs not to be in March or April kind of thing, but how about a New Year resolution and doing it, because that would be the right, you know, that'd be the right time, and it's got a message then about one of your New Year's resolutions to make sure you're registered. That's just a thought to me.
We do work in residential care homes as well.
Yeah.
We've got that planned. We have to revisit all the residential care homes to make sure, because the managers, there's quite a high turnover in managing in residential care homes.
Yeah.
So you will get a relationship with one, and they will know what to do.
They vary so much. I mean, some of them are really. Some are really bad at it. Some of the care homes are saying, oh, no, nobody. You know, you get the response when you go and talk, because we tend to write to everybody in care homes. Because it's addressed to them, they've got to get it. But some care homes, well, nobody is fit enough to vote. They make that. There are quite a few care homes that make that assumption.
And
you don't want that disturbance. No, we're not letting you. And there's nobody that votes.
For the first few years, we had the time and the resources to go out. We made a visit to each of the care homes. We got a link, we got a contact. And then 2016 we were busy with elections, so we didn't get a chance then. So we're picking that up this year, and we're going to contact and we're going to visit every care home and find out. But whoever the care home belongs to, sometimes they move the managers around, so it's about keeping up with those, and so that's what we've got planned. And just something that I missed to say, last year at the district count, we had young people from Conway and from Lower End. And we also, Andy gave us some names for our students who actually worked at the count, and that's what I want to do again this year. Maybe get two different schools and get them to come to watch. And they even came down on the count floor, and we spoke to some of the candidates and the election agents, and they were absolutely, they were blown away. They thought it was really fantastic. It was exciting. Even the ones that sort of said, "Oh, I thought it was going to be really boring." So actually, it is really quite exciting. So I'm hoping, so if you've got any ins with schools, because I'm conscious they will go from South Kirklees, if we could get two schools from North Kirklees, that would be good. And if I can give us some more names of people that could work, that's something we could do.
We could webcast the count. It's about democracy, isn't it?
Spencer, there's a
Thanks very much. That just leaves Andy. I don't mean just Andy.
Some would say that. I just want to start by saying that one of the great pleasure, one of the proudest parts of my professional career was the invitation to chair the Democracy Commission. And in many ways it kind of sort of drew on my connections with Kirklees Council over a decade, particularly working with Mashuda's team and with Michelle Ross and Kirklees Youth Council. I think it says much about the council in the way it thinks about local democracy, that not only you held the Democracy Commission, but also that from the chief executive downward through the officers, and also that full council and this working group is a testament to that commitment. And I think that in many ways it says there's something happening in Kirklees which isn't happening elsewhere in the country. And I thought that one of the things that came out in the report, the document was the fact that young people were prioritised and profiled so highly. And I think it says much about the way you as councillors see them as future citizens, and I really do commend the fact that you are continuing that work. Beyond working with Michelle, I was very proud to work with Mashuda and the team with Simon on the My Country, My Road project, both the design delivery, certainly the report that came out. I hope to carry on working with the re-engagement work. That sounds really interesting, and I'd like to be involved in that. we had conducted a piece of work on Vote 16, which was linked in the final report. Helen Glees, one of my MRes students, is tomorrow submitting her thesis on this, and we're going to produce a report out of it, and I'll talk a little bit in the future aspirations about some of the things that come out of that report. We're working at the moment with, particularly with Sam and the team and with Student Union on a Town and Gown local democracy project where I've got two of my students who are currently doing a piece of research on the campus about why students vote or don't vote, why they do or don't register, etc. We're going to run a workshop with Dr. Ariana Giovannini and some young students from Leicester de Montfort as well at the Not Westminster workshop. We're looking forward to that. And also my annual Pechacucha performance. Diana, put me down. Not literally. Councillor Cooper's been very kind to come down to the university. One of the things the Democracy Commission report was the idea of setting up ward and constituency surgeries in schools, and particularly in the university. Barry Sherman's also engaged in that. We want to roll that out across that. The idea is that the young people, whether they are or not voters, that they get regular contact with their local elected representatives, and that provides a connection with council that goes beyond the vote. It's a much more banal idea on that. Working with Adele has been a pleasure. We are starting to, at the university, think about what we're getting right in terms of how we prepare our students for doing work placements in the council. It's in the Democracy Commission report that would expand that. And we realise that we need to do work at our end, and particularly to make sure we prepare our young people so that they are an asset to the council when they come and work with you. At the moment, we think that there are both good and less good examples of how that works, and it's been great that Adele's been so kind with the time to help us with that. Working with Martin and Cheryl and the team on the NCS development has been really something that's many years ago I was part of the Youth Citizenship Commission, actually first looked at introducing National Citizen Service, and it's been something which has been really pleasurable to see how it's rolling out. Politically, NCS is here to stay. All the main political parties have signed up to it. It is something linked with David Cameron to begin with, but it has become something which is there. And I think the fact that it's going to be, in my opinion, devolved further towards local government as it goes forward. I think that Kirklees is at the forefront of thinking about how you can wire that into the other activities you're doing is certainly something. The university is very keen to fill in some of that issue in the second week. And what we're looking at is the idea that we may be able to provide some of the activities in that second week. We already did last year, and it worked well. You know, we came in and helped with some of the local democracy stuff, but some of the course stuff that we're doing, some of our young people are doing great stuff, and we really want to think about how we can use the university as a site for NCS as well. Going forward, I think one of the things which my experience has been over, you know, I know everyone on this table so well, you know, particularly working with Vina and Michelle and the team about some of the stuff the Kirklees Youth Council are doing as well. We want to develop partnership working, and the university is very keen to start to see how that can be expanded, and we're all working with Rachel and the team there about how we can expand that. There's going to be an event sometime in March where we look at examples of where partnership working succeeded, and then to think about, particularly with your 7 corporate strategy aims, how we can start to think about how we devise some programs that actually open up some networks so we can communicate better, we can think about how we can link up better, and particularly how we can work together better with the stakeholders in the community. The university and the council are anchor institutions for local democracy, and we see very much of that. And I think in some ways, my experience of working with the local authority has been that sometimes those links are a bit sporadic and they can break down, and in some ways we want to make sure that, you know, they're more consistent. I think working with the Democracy Commission has helped with that. The Low Voting Age report is going to be published soon. We're going to publish it and feed it into the working group. Interestingly, I think that one of the things that at a national level is clear is that Votes at 16 is going to become a thing in the next decade. There is change within the Conservative Party at a national level. There's a recent report put out where a number of leading Conservatives said that they would back it, and I think that just the momentum of policy development means it's going to happen. What you're doing here is that you're preparing for it without actually saying that you need to buy into it, and I think that one of the things that's come out of the report is that young people see democratic education as a priority before the voting age is lowered. We did some polling. We talked to over 400 young people, and one of the things that they came out and said is that a third of them said that they may well consider the idea that lowering the voting age at a local level at 16 and then keeping it at 18 may be an option. That's certainly not something at the national level. And I think that we want to feed the report into the local government association and into the Leaving project we're doing. We're also doing some work on 1969. I'm pitching a BBC programme next week to actually look at 50 years, the anniversary of 50 years. It'd be nice to work with that. I want to come and interview you. Civic University project is going forward. The university is very keen to fulfil its role. It already does to a significant extent. Both are students as citizens, and I think that we're starting to realise that that is something which we need further work on, getting them to engage both on campus and in the community, and also that the campus is a site of local democracy itself, and we want to make sure that the community uses it as a site for local democracy. Again, all the people around this table have been really helpful in that, and we've got a very active student union. I want to come back, and it's interesting because the one thing that you've all said is the problem with schools. And as someone that can stand from the outside a little bit and maybe sort of see some things that you can't, when I'm talking to schools, I think the principal problem is that you're all doing so much, but there isn't a coordinated offer, and you're often overlapping in what you're doing, and schools are getting very confused. They've only got a certain amount of time to fit in this activity. And the danger is that they don't see you as separate entities, they see you as the council. It's the same problem the university has. I think there's also the notion that it needs to be fitted into stuff that's happening in communities, and again you're already doing that, and the Kirklees Youth Alliance is somebody, Susan Green, you need to bring to this meeting to talk to you at some point in the future about this, because they're doing some great work. That needs to be synchronised, it needs to be coordinated. And in many ways the offer to the school is the Ofsted offer. It is growing, this idea that democratic socialisation is part of young people's growth. Schools welcome that capacity you can offer, but it needs to be a coordinated offer so that they can fit it into their curriculum and into their timetable easily. At the moment, you're coming in at different times of the year at different points, and some schools are simply overwhelmed by the offer that you make them. There's also the problem that you need to actually get into the heads, and the person that can do that is your chief executive. You need to think about how the council maps into that, because there is a network that you can start to make an offer. But I would advise that you get you get the offer, the package together first before you go back to the schools in some way. And particularly registration. Now, auto registration is probably going to come at some point in the future, but at the moment it isn't quite there, and I think that there is something there about how you work on that. To finish, is the Civic Pathways, the Young Citizens Project. It is ahead of the game. You need to work on this. The House of Lords published a select committee report last year, which I was part of, and the civic journey was integral to that. It was a cross-party report, and it emphasised the fact that citizenship is a journey. Becoming a citizen is part of that, but also that young people are citizens, whatever their age, regardless of whether they can vote or not. Being a citizen at a particular point in life is important to recognise as well. You as councillors need to think about how you engage with young people, but also the council and all the stakeholder community, including the university, needs to think about how we work together. That Civic Pathways project, I think, is an issue about capacity. There is huge capacity. John, I think you're absolutely right. The capacity is there. It's a question, in some ways, of coordinating. You need to collate what's happening. Think about what Susan Greenwood and the Youth Alliance is doing. Connect it to what you're doing within the council, what's happening at the university, and then start to think about, well, what are the transition points of young people's journey towards voting, and how can you offer them something which is a Kirklees offer? Every young person should have a consistent offer of opportunities on that pathway. I think it's highly achieved, and I think that what you're doing in the working group today shows that. Where the university can come in, and what the university is very keen to help with, is both that provision, but also evaluation and analysis. And what you need to be doing as you're doing these things is finding out what works and how it works, and thinking about that. And that's where we as partnership workers want to come in. I've invested a huge amount of my time in this council because I believe in it. I also want to come in there and think about it in terms of how we can think about designing policy that actually means that you can develop this offer as you go along, that it's not a one-step. The democracy mission isn't just a one-off occasion, it is something that's going to carry on developing over the period of time, beyond hopefully our time. And I really am very grateful today that you invited me along. That's probably enough for me.
Comments?
Yeah.
Rob?
Just a suggestion about a possible way of influencing what's happening nationally and also celebrating what we do. Have we had any contact with the Children's Commissioner?
With Anne?
Yeah.
Anne came up about a year ago. They did a Northern Powerhouse project, Northern Voices project. To be honest, it didn't quite seek to go out and tap into the richness of what's happening here. It kind of came here with an agenda that it sought, which was one designed by its own funding programme. I think that, knowing from I worked with Anne on one of the Youth Citizenship Commission 10 years ago, I think that if you made that invitation, she would come.
Because she's local, she lives in Leeds, she's very
Yeah.
interested in West Yorkshire, what's happening in the north of England. I think she'd be really interested. So we could go through the kind of things we've done today to kind of celebrate the things that are happening here, but it also raises these issues about are people like Ofsted going to be interested? Because if as you say, if you've got anything Ofsted says important, schools suddenly have to, and colleges have to make sure they do it. Yeah.
I think also you
But
could
I think
invite
it
the
would
Cabinet
happen,
Office. Chloe Smith would be certainly very interested. The previous Cabinet Office Minister of the Constitution, Chris Skidmore, came to Shelley College 18 months ago. I was part of that. They did a peer-to-peer thing with Michelle, and that made the final report on democratic engagement. So Kirklees is one of the few councils that was recognised in that. There is a narrative that you can buy into, which is this is a place that does things dynamically and differently. And I think you need to keep thinking about that. And I think it's a good idea, but I would also suggest that you make sure that this development of the Civic Pathways project is kind of more mature before you bring the policymakers into the arena. Because I think the problem is it might not quite achieve all that it succeeds. But I definitely think there's an interest for that. And I think there's also an interest to bring a lot of, Martin was very delicate around some of this. The VCO social enterprise community is competitive in some senses because there's an absolute, there's a limited resources. I think one of the things that you can do to bring them in is to think about this idea that it is a partnership, that if we work together, it lifts the framework for everyone, and it's more effective in terms of gaining those resources and attracting, that financial support if there is that evidence of partnership working. And I think that's the opportunity which the Democracy Commission, you've opened the space to do that.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Andrew, for the time and the effort that you have put in on our behalf and everybody around this table. I think it's a great opportunity. You keep saying about coordinated approach and partnership. I think that all the talent that we have in this room, coordinated together, and a package that goes out, I think it'll be phenomenal. And I just think I think this could go from strength to strength. And it's like you said, Andrew, it'll be long after we're gone, but at least it's a legacy that will be going forward. So I just see this as a great opportunity. And I never once thought about the chief exec approaching schools. So to me, that's another way, another avenue that I will be talking about. If that's an opportunity of getting into schools. But I think we've laid the foundations. We've come quite a long way. So well done, everybody.
It's just a question of getting that offer so that schools see it in their interest. And the fact that what you do in the schools connects to what you're doing with the cohesion work, what you're doing in community work, what you're doing in all these different things. So that it seems, so the pathways have logical output. One of the things about NCS is that it's a universal offer, but it's never going to be universally taken up. But those young people that don't go on NCS, what is the offer that they can have during the summer that means that they also have the opportunity to connect? I think that's the pathways idea, is just making sure that you don't have a monochrome offer, that there are different pathways for different young people in different spaces and different places. And I think the thing that's come out of the work you've done recently, which is really important, is that notion of place. Yeah. Place is really important. We know from the Democracy Commission work that Kirklees is not a civic identity that everyone buys into, but the younger generation don't have the memory of 1974. They don't sit back and say, remember when Saddleworth was part of, here in Yorkshire, whatever. And so Kirklees is still exactly. but in many ways, they're the perfect generation to bring in. And I think that one of the things that you need to think about is How do you bind together the registration work, the youth democracy work, the cohesion work, prevent? You know, the students talk very compassionately about the idea of changing prevent to promote the positive values rather than thinking about it in that sort of sense of radicalisation as a detrimental thing. Also bring in youth mental health. You need to bring your NHS trust in. They're a huge civic anchor in this, and they do a lot of engagement with young people. But then think about employability. You know, what I saw yesterday at the Young Employer Network Awards is that Kirklees thinks about young people as valuable in the next generation. That offers out there in a much wider concept. And if you do that, I think that it'll take time. It'll take time to bring it through. If you think about evidence-based policy, if you're capturing and evaluating as you go along, then you'll find that the what works approach will start to develop the pathway in a way which is ahead of its game. It's about starting at the local and moving to the national rather than from the national down to the local, because that's where young people see their citizenship in where they live.
Just, I mean, anyone else? I like to think of it, but a few weeks ago I attended a meeting in my ward which was about a planning application. There were about 120 to 30 people there. Not one of them understood the planning system. And it just struck me that because they didn't understand the system, their objection to a planning application meant that they were totally ineffective and how to campaign against it. And probably two-way down the line because they hadn't taken part in the LDF in the first place. Because that's the decision they made then. But also because they didn't understand the formulation they were putting together, why it shouldn't happen, were not planning reasons. And for most of the time you don't need to know about it, but that was a good example. A large number of people, and not many young ones, but some young ones, but not all, but just didn't understand the system whatsoever. And I think that a lot of time when we talk about democracy, we don't use the example of planning enough about how you influence what happens in your local area. And that system is it's a very formal system that's laid out, but very few people understand it. So I think the importance of getting the message across and starting young and saying it's important. You might not ever need to know these sort of things, but if you do need it, you lose something of democracy. You lose the power to change the local area if you don't understand the system. And I think that's something that's been used in people. For some people's interest, it's easier for people not to understand the system.
As local councillors, you will find that often the issues that relate to you go to the MP, and the things that go to the MP are often linked to you. Yeah. And I think that says something about the power of local democratic education. I would urge you to focus on three things. One is about knowledge, and all the team here are producing things that can educate young people about local democracy. They need to develop the skills, and they need the skills through programmes like My Country, My Vote, and the work with the Kirklees Youth Council on NCS and other packages. So the other thing they need is experience. And the only way in which you're going to get lifelong voters is if they get used to the idea that participation has an effect before they get to whatever the voting age is, be it 18, 16, or as a recent professor said, 6. That's not going to happen. But the idea is so that they get a sense that they can have an effect on their local communities before the vote. And so the vote's only one of a number of tools that they're used to using to actually shape the place they live in. And I think you're on that journey. I do get the sense which you are on that journey already. But as I say, I think there's a need to both think about capacity, think about collation of what's happening, and then think about coordination so that there's a coherent, consistent offer to every young person. You're on the way, you're on a really good pathway, and I genuinely think that this is a unique exercise. I can commend you.
Can I thank everyone for attending today? Can I just say that in today's meeting is helping me to climb out of my slough of despond. Because my impression about what's happening internationally and nationally with politics and everything else is that I fear for the young children today, what they're growing up, what the world is becoming. But there is some encouragement, I think, that we've got to do our part to make sure that the next generation is changing for the better. Thank you everyone for attending. It's been a great meeting.